Hello, good evening. My name is Major Brendan Nagel. I'm the Operations Officer with 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening. It's our regret and unfortunate that we can't meet together to talk about our upcoming deployment and to answer your questions in person, but we're so grateful that you joined us. Those of you who are on the live feed right now watching us, thank you for taking the time to watch this. And before we get started, I'd just like to let everybody know that we will have the opportunity to answer any questions that you have in real time if you haven't sent them already. Our Family Readiness Officer, Mark Sperling, is here, and he has his phone, and he's ready to receive any questions that you might have by text or email. So if you do have any questions throughout the brief, please send them, and I have those, the number and the email address right in front of me. The number is 760-277-3491. I'll say that one more time, so if you need to write it down, it's 760-277-3491. And again, if you have any of those questions throughout the brief, please send them via text, and then we'll address all the questions at the end of the brief today. And he also has his email up, and that is magbasfro@gmail.com. That's magbasfro@gmail.com. So please send your questions in, and that's really why we're doing this, is to make sure that we get all the information to the Marines and their families prior to going on this deployment. So on behalf of Lieutenant Colonel Pat Byrne and Sergeant Major Ruben Soto, who are here today, welcome to our pre-deployment town hall brief. And again, we hope to get a lot of questions from you. So before we start, I'm going to go quickly over the material that we're going to cover during the brief. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take about 5 to 10 minutes and just talk about what we have planned for our deployment, what events we have, what training exercises, and where the Marines will be living during the deployment, both on Okinawa and if we get on board shipping. After that, I'll talk a little bit about means of communication, so how you can connect with your Marine while we're deployed, both in Okinawa and while we're on the ship. And then we have our battalion surgeon here who's going to talk about what I'm sure is everybody's biggest concern right now, which is what our medical situation is and COVID-19 concerns. He's going to address some of those, and if you have any specific questions that we get through Mark, he'll be able to answer those as well. After that, I'm going to talk about pay entitlements and dependent entitlements. So some Marines may be wondering, are they going to make more money? Are they going to make less money on deployment? We'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about postal procedures, so how you can get mail to and from your Marines during the deployment. And then at the end, we'll have Mark will come up, and he's going to talk about the Volunteer Network Program, as well as cover some slides for the chaplain, Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, and our MFLAC, Military Family Life Counselor. All of those people were going to come today, but we tried to reduce the number of people that we gathered together. So Mark is going to cover all of that information. And then at the end, any questions that were sent in, and we already received a couple, we'll answer those questions for about 20 to 30 minutes. And Sergeant Major and the CO will close with their final comments. And before I get into doing the introduction to what we'll be doing on deployment, just want to introduce who the key leaders in the battalion are. So if your Marine is assigned to a specific company, you know who their leadership is. So the battalion commander is Lieutenant Colonel Pat Byrne, and the Sergeant Major is Sergeant Major Ruben Soto. Our executive officer is Major Richard Jahelka. And then H&S Company Commander is Captain Alvin McBride, and the H&S Company First Sergeant is Gunnery Sergeant Kevin Heinley. Echo Company Commander is Captain Dan Crane, and the Echo Company First Sergeant is First Sergeant Eddie Che. Fox Company Commander is Captain Alan Poe and First Sergeant Dwayne Camiado, and then Golf Company is Captain Jesse Moyles and First Sergeant Ryan McCrary. Weapons Company Commander is Captain Ben Waring and First Sergeant Luis Guerrera. They would love to be here to introduce themselves, but again, because of some restrictions on gatherings out in town, we tried to reduce the number of people we had here. And then one last announcement I want to make before I get into introducing the deployment. I just wanted to take a second to thank the staff of the church here. The church has been exceptionally generous to 2-4, to the Magnificent Bastards for a very long time. So this is just the tip of the iceberg of what they provide to your Marines and sailors. And they came in here today, even though most of their events across the church have been canceled, and they offered their services so we could live stream this event to you today. So thank you very much to the church and their staff for hosting us once again. Okay, so now getting into the meat and the potatoes of what we're here to talk about today, which is our deployment, which is coming up for most folks in May. So a quick orientation to where we're going. If you can see the map chip on your screens, we'll all be deploying to Okinawa, which is an island chain south of mainland Japan, and it's about a 16-hour flight from Southern California. And then just moving in closer so you can see exactly where Okinawa is relative to mainland Japan and some of the rest of mainland China. And as we get closer in, you can see, hopefully you can see on the screen on the left side, this is the island of Okinawa, and our base where the 31st MEU will be based along with the battalion landing team, which we'll be assigned to, will be at Camp Hansen, but we'll also be doing training all across the island, especially during the first part of the deployment. And then I'll get into the schedule in a couple of slides, but just so you have a point of reference, once we embark the ships for the MEU portion, the Marine Expeditionary Unit portion of the deployment, the Marines will be assigned to one of 3 ships. And it's about 35 to 40% will be on the LHA, which is a ship that looks like this. It's kind of a small aircraft carrier. And then another third of the Marines will be assigned to the LPD, which is a helicopter carrier, another amphibious ship. And then the remainder of the Marines will be assigned to a ship that looks like this, which is an LSD. So the vast majority of Marines in the BLT, after getting to Okinawa, will embark upon one of these ships and be deployed for a period of about 2 months. And you'll see that in the schedule, which is on the next slide. So here's the overall schedule for our deployment. We are scheduled to deploy with the advanced party. There's fewer than 100 Marines will be leaving in April, between April 10th and April 20th, to go to Okinawa to get everything ready for the rest of the battalion. And the rest of the battalion is called the main body. So the advanced party will go there for about a month and get all the gear, the barracks, all of the facilities ready so we can receive the rest of the battalion. That'll be in April. And then the rest of the battalion is scheduled to deploy between May 10th and 20th. And many of you are probably wondering, and we can answer specific questions about this if you have them, whether the coronavirus or COVID-19 is going to have any effect on our deployment timelines. And what we have from our higher headquarters right now and from the headquarters Marine Corps is that our deployment is still planned to go as scheduled. We're still planning to switch out with our sister battalion, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, in between May 10th and May 20th of 2020. So once we get to Okinawa for about a month, we'll spend time doing our own training, similar to the training we do here in Camp Pendleton. And the whole point of that is to get ready to work with the rest of the Marine Expeditionary Unit. And then in the end of July, July 15th to July 31st, we'll be doing an exercise which is called MUEX. And that's a training exercise that gets us ready to work with the aviation combat element, the logistics combat element, and our new higher headquarters in Okinawa to work together as a team prior to getting on board one of those 3 ships that I showed the pictures earlier. Once we're done with MUEX in mid-August, we're planning to embark on shipping and do 2 exercises. The first is called Amphibious Integration Training, AIT, and the second is called Certification Exercise, which is often called CERTEX. Once we do that, we're certified, and we're known as being the 31st MEU, the forward deployed unit that can respond to crisis anywhere in the Indo-Pacific region. Once we're done with the MUEX, the CERTEX, and AIT, we then go to the Marianas Islands to do an exercise called Valiant Shield. And this is going to be one of the largest naval exercises that the United States has done in decades. It's going to be in Guam, Tinian, and some other small islands in the Marianas Island chain, and it'll take about 2 weeks. Once we're complete with that, right now we're scheduled to go to the Philippines to do an exercise alongside the Philippine Marine Corps. And once we're finished with the Philippine exercise, all of the Marines will be going back to Okinawa, disembarking the ships at the end of October, and then getting ready to fly back with our scheduled flyback window for the majority of the Marines of the battalion. will occur from November 10th to November 20th. So that's the general overview of where we're going to be doing exercises, what times we're going to be doing them, and if anybody has any specific questions about those, again, we'd be more than happy to answer them during the question and answer portion. And then finally, before I ask Doc to come up here to talk about some concerns about and how we're going to mitigate concerns of COVID-19, I'm going to talk about the best ways to communicate with your Marines while they're forward deployed. So in Okinawa, all of the barracks have Wi-Fi, and then there's faster Wi-Fi that you can also purchase. So there should be time to talk and communicate either via email or face chat with your Marines while they're in Okinawa. Now, just like in Camp Pendleton, all the Marines will have varied schedules. Sometimes they'll be going to the field, sometimes they'll be doing training, so you won't be able to talk to them every day, but opportunities to have communication with your Marines in Okinawa should be fairly regular. Once we get on ship in August, so the period from the middle of August until the end of October, communication will be much more difficult. Email is possible, and there will be times, especially if we go to a port, where they'll be able to make phone calls, but generally speaking, communication during the time that we're at sea, from the middle of August until the end of October, you're gonna have less frequent and less reliable communication with Marines during that time frame. And then mail, so what we heard from 1st Battalion, 5th Marines is that the mail in Okinawa is very reliable and not as reliable on the ship, and I'll get into some more details on that when we have the postal slide. And then if your Marines are doing exercises like that large exercise in the Marianas or in the Philippines, it's gonna depend on the location that your Marine's in. They may or may not have the ability to communicate with you during that period, so it's gonna depend. So all we're asking is that make sure you remain flexible and have a good positive mental attitude, and just look forward to the next time you can communicate with your Marine, and keep that communication open, especially during the initial portions when we're in Okinawa and have reliable Wi-Fi. And then lastly, international phone plans. So a lot of Marines have been asking the best way to be able to communicate via phone. So most of the large carriers have international plans. They tend to be a little bit expensive, AT&T and Verizon, that allow you to talk back and forth between Okinawa, Japan, and the United States of America. They have those plans, but they tend to be a little bit more expensive. Another option that our sister battalion did recommend is Google Fi, which is a new carrier, and the advantage of that is they have a certain amount of international phone calls that are not additional cost, and international data costs the same as domestic data. So it's a good opportunity to be able to keep your number and be able to continue to use the same cell phone. You just get a new SIM card. So that's one thing you might want to look into as a potential means of communicating during the deployment. So I'll be followed by our battalion surgeon, who's going to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 mitigation and how we're going to keep our Marines and sailors safe.
Good evening, everyone. Lieutenant Muller, battalion surgeon. Just going to talk a little bit about the coronavirus, where we're at now here in the States, and as well as how it's going to affect us on deployment. So as of right now, there are no confirmed positive coronavirus cases in 2-4. We have no one who is currently pending any testing for coronavirus. We do have 4 personnel in the battalion who have been isolated to their homes due to travel or recent contacts with others who have coronavirus. They have been restricted to their homes and are no longer able to spread that potentially throughout our battalion. In addition, we are paying close attention to anyone with upper respiratory symptoms, cough, fevers, and shortness of breath. In order to restrict that within the battalion, we're providing a very lenient sick in quarters criteria for us. As for our deployment, we do have basically only Japan on here as a high-risk location for us. Looking through Japan, the only high-risk area in Japan currently is Hokkaido, which is the very northern part of Japan, and Okinawa is actually a very low-risk area in Japan with only 3 cases reported there over the past month. None of those through military personnel. The way we're going forward here is we will continue following force health protection plans, currently force health protection condition Bravo here and as well in Okinawa. So with that, we just continue these 6 healthy habits, as you can see on your screen, just kind of continuing with very good hygiene practices and the restrictions that we mentioned at the beginning of that. So that's all I have currently. We'll answer questions as they come in, and I'll turn it back over to the OPSO.
Okay, thanks, Doc. Appreciate that update, and we'll continue to push information about COVID-19 and how we can best protect ourselves and our families through the Fro as he sends his weekly emails. All right, so the next slide we're going to talk about, this was a presentation that was prepared by our admin chief, Gani Afaji, and it's going to talk about your deployment pay and entitlements while we're in Okinawa and while we're on ship. So the bottom line up front here is that there's not much difference in the amount of pay you're going to receive during the deployment, but there is a change. So as you can see on the top in the red where it says deducted, you're going to be deducted your basic allowance for subsistence, BAS. And that's a little bit different number for officers than it is for enlisted. And then you'll start receiving your FSA, which is family separation allowance, in the amount of $250 per month. However, that entitlement doesn't kick in until the 31st day that you're separated from your family member. So anybody who has a family starting on the 31st month, you'll start receiving $250 a month. So in net, the difference between the deduction and the credit is about $120 for enlisted. And Sergeant Major, when I'm done here, Sergeant Major is going to add one more additional item to the changes in pay. So that's the main deduction and credit that you'll be receiving while we're deployed. Now, Sergeant Major also asked us to address how do you add a dependent basically if you have a baby while we're deployed overseas. So the procedures are there on your screen, but the most important thing to know right now is that if you're anticipating this is going to happen or may happen during your deployment, you need a valid power of attorney, and you need the child's birth certificate to be able to add that dependent in the system while your service member is forward deployed. So make sure you're prepping that power of attorney. Our battalion adjutant has the ability to sign powers of attorney. So if your Marine hasn't done so, tell him to get to the adjutant during his power of attorney office hours to get that prepared before we deploy. And then the last part of pay and entitlements is the Eagle Cash Card. The Eagle Cash Card, it essentially works as a debit card, but it's the only way that you can pay for items while you're on the ship. So if you go to the ship store or if you buy any of the ship's merchandise, anything you need to use for payment on the ship has to use this Eagle Cash Card. And it's going to come out of the Marine's checking account. So it's pretty important, especially during a time when there's limited communication, that you have a good plan for the checking account that this Eagle Cash Card is tied to has sufficient funds inside of it so that you're not crediting past zero and developing a deficit that you have to pay at the end of the deployment. So that requires some communication between the Marine and his or her spouse. And Sergeant Major, did you want to address something about chow during deployment as well? Okay, yeah, good point. So what Sergeant Major was trying to show me with hand and arm signals about eating was that we are deducting, and I'm going to go back to the slide again, we are deducting the basic allowance for subsistence, but that's because all Marines will have a meal card, and they'll have the ability to eat in government quarters in Okinawa and on ship. So you're losing some money, but you're getting some chow for it. Did I get that, Sergeant Major? Yeah, okay. A little bit outside of my lane as an operations officer, but I'm doing the best I can here. Okay, so the next slide, and this was prepared by our battalion adjutant. He's our postal officer, and what he wanted me to emphasize is that basically the same restrictions that apply for domestic shipping at post offices also apply for the packages that you'll send to your Marines overseas. So the weight limit is 70 pounds and the length is 108 inches, the same as if you were sending back to your hometown in Connecticut or some other great state like that. There's some non-mailable items, such as obscene and indecent matter, lotteries or fraudulent material, drugs or alcohol, explosives, flammables, or poisonous items, firearms or ammunition, and unprotected sharp objects. So it seems strange that we have to go through this, but you would be very surprised the items that we find in Marines' mail when it gets sent overseas. And not only is it potentially getting the Marine in trouble, but it's also potentially dangerous. When we're overseas, some of our mail gets transported by military aircraft, and those aircraft aren't pressurized, so there's a lot of reasons why these restrictions are in place. So I just ask that you please abide by these so we don't put Marines or their equipment in danger. And for timelines, in Okinawa, it takes about 10 to 14 days for the mail to reach the Marine. Now, during the period that we're embarked, the mail is going to go to Okinawa first, and then it's going to get forwarded to the ship. So you can expect that it'll take another 1 to 2 weeks on top of that 10 to 14 days to make it to your Marine. So it's a significant amount of time. And as you can see at the bottom, yes, Marines can receive mail on ship, but it's just going to take a little bit longer. Okay, so I'm going to be followed by Mark Sperling, who's our Deployment Readiness Coordinator, sometimes known as the FRO, and he's going to cover some things to make sure that we're ready for deployment.
Thank you, sir. Again, my name is Mark Sperling. I am the Deployment Readiness Coordinator for 2-4, soon to be Battalion Landing Team 2-4. So that includes not only the battalion itself, but also all of our attached personnel that might be viewing this live stream. So we have attachments from other commands that will be joining us. There'll be a slide up here soon that covers over some of the information that tells who those points of contact are. So don't fret that you have to go through me if you're an attached family to the BLT. Now you have the luxury of having multiple DRCs and URCs to help and assist you and your family in meeting up with the challenges that are going to be posed to you later on. All right, now I'm going to go through this rather quickly, but it's kind of framed in a way that you'll be able to see what we got going on here. Oh, I got to go back here. It doesn't have the action that I had. This slide here looks a little busy, but the main emphasis here is the Deployment Readiness Guidebook. And the guidebook is tailored with resources and contacts in it to help assist you in getting you and your families prepared for this upcoming deployment. First question that's asked on one of the checklists are you ready? And it poses a dynamic question to Marines, sailors, and families because where their jobs are so varied across the spectrum within the tasks that are at hand for the deployment, but at the same time, they have responsibilities to their families and their extended families as well. This could be parents, this could be spouses, this could be children, and other relationships related with guardianship or actually extended family members as parents. So we take into account quite a few things here, and it all involves around the idea of being ready and being resourceful, because when your Marines and sailors deploy, they're not immediately available, and sometimes even if they do have a chance to come home for an emergency situation, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. One of the things that are in that checklist are how to put together care packages, which the Major hit upon with the mail procedures. Care packages, they have a set standard box through the U.S. Postal Service that you can actually go out to the U.S. Postal Service and request free materials. That's boxes, packing tape, and source materials that include your custom forms to fill out. And there was a change just recently that appeared this month in which now your custom forms have to be filled out in advance on a website, and you have to have that printed off and take it to the post office. You are no longer allowed to use the form that used to be a manual form and fill it out at the post office. You actually have to do it ahead of time, and it's one of those things that's built in to build in efficiencies at the post office. Another thing that goes through is the cycle of emotions that a lot of our family members will go through. There's 5 of them that they talk about with the anticipation of loss, detachment and withdrawal, emotions, disorganization, recovery, stabilization. Then on the other side of it, the anticipation of a homecoming, the homecoming itself, and then the reintegration process. A lot of this information is in this guidebook, and it helps families understand sometimes how they're feeling. We're in a much of a nowadays in the new generation with the self-help menus that are out there. People like to read all the self-help books and learn and study more about and understand why they feel the way that they do. And this guidebook is set up in that way to actually help guide you through. It doesn't answer everybody's situation or particular their situation. So that's where myself and other professionals that come in for the resources and referral side of the house are able to step in and help you and your families get through those tough spots and help out where we can. But use those checklists. The checklists are varied. They are for single Marines, singles with dependent and dual active duty spouses. There's another one for married Marines with civilian spouses and family members. They also have in their suggestions, which Marines already and sailors already have their packing list identified, but it gives you some things to consider as additional items if you have room for them. It talks about finances and how to tailor them and work them out, especially like it was mentioned here earlier with the STAR card and making sure that you and your family are aware of your responsibilities, and also giving Marines and sailors an available cash fund to tap into when they are deployed that they can use that doesn't interfere with them getting into deficit spending while they're deployed. You have to definitely open up those lines of communication. It also talks about, storing your vehicles, how to set up your home for your family. It talks about, even getting the pets taken care of, emergency contacts. But it's all in this handbook. Even though it was done back in 2017, it is still a very valid working tool for everybody concerned today. So I please want you to look at that. And in fact, the website is located there on the bottom of the slide. And it's something that I put out onto the regular blast that you should see from time to time with information out there that takes you right to the website where you can actually look at this and go through it. And it's very important that you do that, because we want you to be able to be successful while you're underway, because there are things in there that talks about wills and powers of attorney, preparing your family care plan, your pay, finances, your comm plan, and also getting into other areas that are important for individuals in meeting the challenges that they're going to have during the deployment. This here slide here with the deployment readiness covers over many, many varied topics. First question on there is about, do I stay or do I go? This is an individual decision that changes even for experienced families because of their family dynamics. They may have very young children in which it's great to go back home and be with other siblings and other nephews and nieces and have the experience back home during the deployment, but maybe this time you have older children or those that are more engaged, more involved. Maybe you have a career. Maybe you have your kids that are involved with year-round school. So the dynamics changes, but you need to make these decisions and do the equations with the dollars and cents on the other side so that you don't put yourself in a financial hardship because of an uninformed choice. We also want you to, if you do plan on being away, that is our spouses primarily, if you're going to be away from your residence that's identified on your record of emergency data or on the notification, family notice, your family contact information, that is, please contact me. You can send an email, you can send a text, but at least let me know that you're going to be gone for a certain period of time, and a good reference as far as location in the event that emergency does arise, because when we do have notifications, they don't come when we expect it. And the thing is, they're going to be looking at your record of emergency data, which reflects where your current residence is. So if it's something outside that, the only thing that they're going to have possibly is a phone number, and we do not do notifications to phones. They have to do a physical appearance in front of you for proper notifications. The communication plan was spoken about, and it all deals with the frequency and availability of your Marine or sailor. And if that's not available, we want you to also set up tools that allow you to talk to other families and if you're a spouse that's going to stay here in the command area, we want you to contact other spouses and be a part of the social network that they have. The spouses here have their own social webpage site that they run, and they get together, they plan events, and it's a very useful tool to have as an outlet, basically as a lifeline too. And it can be useful when those unexpected emergencies or items pop up, that maybe you have to take a child in to see the doctor right away, and you have two other ones at home that are, you don't want to impact by taking them with you. You call up a friend, you call up the neighbor, get a hold of one of our volunteers, and that's where our volunteer network will jump up on the spot and help out and assist any way that they can. This also involves when we have new births, in which the fathers are not, able to come home. We have a lot of spouses here that will go to and help you as much as they can before, during, and even afterwards, after the childbirth, to make sure that our newest member of the Magnificent Bastard family, be it a boy or girl, twins, triplets, or whatever, we're all taken care of, and we're given the best treatment and care possible. We're also looking for you to prepare with the information that I already provided you by making yourself a deployment binder, or we call it kind of a do-everything binder. It's very important to put all of this important information in one central point so that you can grab and go reference it, or in the event that something happens to you, here being the sole parent or guardian, that it can be handed off to somebody else where they can open it up and find useful information and details that may be pertinent while you are incapacitated and not able to provide. The building resiliency is all part of the equation, and we want to make sure that we have you and those around you best prepared to meet up with all these challenges with the deployment. You can prepare for multiple scenarios, but nobody ever can prepare for them all. Just like our Marines, they do a lot of heavy training, but it does not always prepare them for the actual mission, but they still have to move forward, making choices along the way. And we expect our families to be as resilient and resourceful as the Marines that they are affiliated with. We also want you to be able to go ahead and set realistic goals. We have a lot of that'll be single parents while they're back here. We have a lot of young families where they're just couples and no children. And we want you to be able to reach out with those others that have kind of the same dynamic background with their families, and be able to reach out and touch them and coordinate things so that you can go ahead and plan events, maybe even volunteer more, go back to school. Maybe you're looking at employment to help out with the loss of the income that comes around with some of these deployments. But we will always want you to be able to go out and set realistic goals so that they're obtainable towards the end. And then setting realistic expectations, and then most importantly, which was brought up earlier, staying positive throughout the entire deployment. I know it gets difficult at times, and especially people don't realize that our spouses back here, that they become single parents by default as soon as their Marine or sailor steps off. And that's what you have to plan on, is how are you going to basically prepare yourself and your family to make it through each and every day with the challenges that arise. Now, this slide here kind of goes through that planning and management of expectations, and you see the spikes and the valleys in it. And you can see how right now we're in the first phase of it for the pre-deployment and the workups. And after the Marines step off, we're hoping that as you come down from this, that we'll be able to maintain a plane here in which there'll be a normalcy that'll be established, and until the end of the deployment, in which then you'll have some, hopefully some rather good experiences and revelations that you can actually do this on your own if it is your first time, or if it happens to be your 7th or 8th time, you are having a easy time with it. Because I know that just asking spouses at our meetings and the gatherings that we had in the past months, we have some spouses that are really frightful and don't want their husbands to leave, and on the other side of the coin, I won't give out any names, but they wish that their husband or sailor, Marine left maybe a month ago, because they realize on the other side of this that the sooner they leave, the sooner they come back. And it's a realization for a lot of experienced families that even though they may have been through multiple deployments, combat and non-combat, is that every single deployment has its unique flavor and spin and different types of challenges that need to be met. And how are we going to help you out in doing that? Well, we have a lot of community and national organizations here to help. This slide just projects just a few of the major ones that come to mind and that are available through the base and our surrounding neighborhood here. They are all there to help, and you do not need to come through me for them. It's great if you do, but you have the ability to reach out to these folks and ask for support at any time just by going ahead and notifying them. And here's the other information that I wanted to provide to you. This is all of our DRCs and URCs with our attached commands. I did not give out specific units because they drill down pretty low to the squad and platoon level, but these are the individuals at those commands that our attached personnel should already be familiar with, and if you're not, they are available and they know of my information too, and we are coordinating to make sure that the information that the BLT gets, that it also goes through them and gets forwarded to you as well. So if you have not been in touch with your units, DRC or URC, I ask that you go out there with this contact information. Please get in contact with them, update your information so that you are getting the information from not only me, but them as well, and they know who you are, and it helps us out in building our communication network that much more. Now, I've been asked to come out here and also give a little bit of information for our battalion chaplain. Chaplain Taylor wasn't able to be here, but he didn't give me his information because, again, he's going to be deploying with the rest of the battalion. However, these numbers and contacts are available to everybody all the time, and he wanted to make sure that this information got out there, because he's going to be affected by communications just like your Marines and sailors will be, and it's important that if you do seek out pastoral care or want to talk to somebody that has total confidentiality, when you talk to them, the chaplains are your greatest resource and your confidant in going out and talking to somebody. So this information and these slides we will make available to you with our video here that is being recorded during this live stream, and it'll be available to you through our Facebook page within a couple of days here. So if you didn't get it, the information here now, you can always review back through the presentation and pull this information, and I'll always be able to be reached and contacted to fill you in on any gaps that maybe didn't come through right. Now, here's my shameless plug for our deployment. Normally, I don't get involved with the fundraising side. However, because of the turmoil that we are going through with the coronavirus, this has been kind of lopped off on me, so I'm going to be basically coordinating a lot of this. But we do have a deployment t-shirt that's available for not only our Marines and sailors, so that's why we got the olive drab green, but we also have one in your basic black, for evening wear. And then we also have a red one. So if you're up on all the social sites and everything else, the significance of the red is remember everyone deployed. So, and they usually wear red shirts on Fridays. This is also a good shirt maybe to wear if you get one in advance for a send-off time. I don't know how we're going to be handling our send-offs. It's still kind of up in the air. We are planning on having regular send-offs, but in the event that this coronavirus takes a weird turn or spikes, you may not have the opportunity to come up to the parade deck, but at least you'll be able to wear this on every Friday to basically show how proud you are of your Marines and sailors at the tip of the spear for the time that they're with the 31st MEU. There will be more information on this put on the FroBlast with the website that gets you out there so that you can go out and purchase these. Not all the proceeds, but any of the profits that are made from the sale of this will go towards the Marine Corps birthday ball, which we'll have later in the year. And of course, the blast will announce it as soon as we set parameters behind that, because it will be after our Marines and sailors get back from their deployment. I'm still on deck, but now I'm talking Marine Corps relief. If you haven't noticed already on our Facebook page, we've been pushing out the information on there. The Navy Marine Corps Relief Society's fund drive is in full speed ahead right now, and are looking for people to contribute and donate through either cash, check, or they can do a payroll deduction on this through allotments. And this is the way that the Marine Corps and the Navy basically takes care of their own. Okay, come on, here we go. And this is their mission statement. They're basically providing finance, education, and other assistance to our men and women in uniform, eligible family members, and survivors during times of need. They give out a series, it's on a need basis, and it covers over these type of items. They are available for either grants, which you end up having to, it's an outright payment, and they also do loans from time to time through a payroll deduction that would affect your Marine. How do you do this if you do have an emergency like this, or at least want to get it prepared so if an emergency does come up? Well, there are ways to do this, and that is through a special power of attorney, a pre-authorization power of attorney, and a general power of attorney. The thing is for this is that the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society has a specific form that gets filled out, signed off by the Marine, and as long as the spouse or family member that is acting back here in their interest with the power of attorney, they can go ahead and put this in for them. But they do need to have these on file with the Navy Marine Corps Relief, or at least have them personally in their possession in order to present this to the Relief Society in order to get things started. And that is it for that area. And I'm on deck for the one last slide. And this is from our military and family life counselor. Heather couldn't be here. She, again, like everybody else, we had to shorten up our cast of characters up here for presentations. But she wanted to ensure that I gave out this information and a few billets from her. The MFLACs, as we affectionately call them, provide solution-focused, non-medical counseling. They provide communications and conflict resolution skills for couples to help them thrive. They are not crisis responders. They are mandatory reporters. However, they have confidentiality. They do not take notes during these. And if a Marine or a spouse is struggling with any anxiety or depression, then they need to be seen by an actual medical provider. But they provide the relationship counseling during transitions, deployments, reunifications, and which can be challenging for some members and some couples, because you saw that slide before that goes through the deployment phase. Sometimes couples go through a lengthy separation like this, and basically new responsibilities and new roles are assumed It becomes sometimes can be a contentious or power struggle when they get back together on the reunion side of it, because now that a member's been gone and hasn't been in that position for a while, you can't just step right back into it and assume that everything's going to work out the way it was before you left. So there are some phases that everybody goes through, and that's what the MFLACs strive to do, is help get through those hiccups. They are our life coaches. So with that, I think we're getting up towards the question and answer time here, and then our closing comments. So I'm going to turn the mic over to our MC here. Thank you for your time.
All right, thanks so much, Mark. A lot of resources that he provided that we can use both on the Marine side and on the family side during deployment. And as Mark queues up any questions that we might have coming in, I just wanted to say one more time that we know the time before a deployment is a very anxious time for Marines and their families. It can create a lot of stress. And then the current situation with COVID-19 and the coronavirus, the very fact that we're not able to gather here together to answer your questions in person is probably amplifying some of that anxiety and stress. And our whole purpose of doing this brief today, regardless of whether or not we had the current situation with the coronavirus, is to try to cut through some of that anxiety by giving you the information that we do have. We're not fortune tellers, we're not able to predict the future, but we are able to tell you what we know about what our deployment looks like and what we think we'll be doing there and how you can prepare yourself in the best way possible for what may come ahead. So as Mark continues to pull up the questions, and I'm sure he's got some good ones in there, I'll answer the first one, which came in a little bit earlier. And this question is, the specific question is, when will short-term Marines return from the deployment? So first I'd like to answer what a short-term deployer is. So there's a certain end of active service that you have to have with enough time at the end of a deployment to be able to do the entire deployment. And that's by our Marine Corps Services policy. Our division, 1st Marine Division, has a policy that people that have an end of active service, an EAS that might not be that far out, can do part of a deployment, and we get them back to their home station with sufficient time for them to prepare their transition out of the Marine Corps. And so, I've been told via text that you may have heard us discussing this right before we went live on the brief, because the mics were hot, and we were actually just discussing this very issue. We have a plan for the short-term deployers, and it's going to depend on what exactly your EAS is. Most of the Marines who are deploying as short-term deployers, you can expect them to come back to the United States sometime around the middle of August before we get on the amphibious ships. The remainder of the Marines who are short-term deployers, many of them will come back in late October, and there's some Marines who will be coming in November, and we have a plan by name for who those Marines are and when they're going to come back. We've submitted that plan to higher headquarters, and we're waiting for the final approval for how we're going to execute that plan. As soon as that plan is approved by our higher headquarters, your company, your Marines, Marine or sailors, company leadership will be contacting them directly so that they can start getting a little bit of expectation of when those short-term deployer, that population, can plan to come back to the United States. And there was a second part to this question, which is, how are you going to help short-term Marines make sure that they have what they need when they come back to check out and have an easy transition back to civilian life? So some of this is on the Marine, but some of it is on the command as well. The first step that all Marines who are short-term deployers, and even some Marines who are not, need to accomplish is to go to the Transition Readiness Seminar, TRS. And because of the COVID-19 right now, Sergeant Major, do I have this right, that they're now offering the TRS online. So Marines can register to do the TRS in an online format, which might help some Marines be able to do that ahead of time. That TRS program gives you a lot of resources. It gives you access to a lot of information that can help you prepare so you can do some of this stuff during the 2 months that we have left before we deploy. So it's a little bit less stressful on the backside of the deployment, especially for the short-term deployers. So I would recommend for the Marines who are asking those questions, or the families who might be watching, to encourage your Marines to get involved in that TRS program as early as possible, and to start following some of the recommendations that the experts that provide that seminar will provide to you. Sergeant Major, did I get all that right? Excellent.
Sir, if there was one thing I could add to that too, the transitional readiness seminars that are open are usually opened up to our military spouses as well. So they make great attendees, they ask good questions, and even if you can't attend the whole thing, they ask you to come and be a part of your Marine or sailor's transition by attending the classes as much as you can with them. MCCS also offers a separate spouse program underneath the STEP program that allows you to go through a framework. So if your plan is, once you exit the military with your spouse, that you can go to this class and start building your resume and building contacts and getting out there to make yourself, give yourself a greater chance at employment as well.
And I should have mentioned this before we started the question and answer session. I gave the number and the email at the beginning of the brief, and I realized some people may have gotten home from work or doing activities and may not have gotten that information. So I'll say it one more time. If you do have questions and want to text them to Mark Sperling, his phone number is 760-277-3491. 760-277-3491. And if you send them to him, he'll read them out loud, and we'll get the best person to answer that question. Mark, are there any additional questions at this time?
The first question, I believe our doc, our medical officer already covered all the questions on it. It was a 4-part question, but I think you hit upon all of those because we kind of reviewed it beforehand. The next question that I have is, my husband is considered a short-time deployer. What does this mean? When will he be coming home, and will short-time deployers be going on ship?
So I think I answered that a little bit earlier. The question about Marines who are short-term deployers going on ship is going to depend on what their exact EAS is. And I don't want to advertise the exact dates because, like I said, our plan for when we're sending back each individual Marine is pending approval by higher headquarters, by 1st Marine Division right now. And once we have that information, which Marines will go back when will be published through the company commanders. I anticipate over the next 2 weeks or so, we should have an answer back. CEO just nodded his head. So we expect within the next 2 weeks, we should have an answer. The Marines who come back in August will not embark upon the ship, and those who come back in October likely will embark upon amphibious shipping. Does that answer your question, Mark?
I believe that does.
Excellent.
Our next question is, will the BLT remain composite once we have returned CONUS for a month like a Westpac MEU? What is the impact of this on the post-deployment leave?
That's a good question, and I failed at the beginning to welcome. I'm sure there's some Marines, sailors, and their families that are watching this that are going to be part of BLT 24, Marines from other units outside of 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines who are deploying to Okinawa at the same time as us to composite as the battalion landing team. So we have an artillery battery, we have LAR platoon, we have an AAV platoon, an engineer platoon, and then we have a detachment from 2nd Battalion, 11th Marines, our fire supporters, who will all be joining us in Okinawa. The 31st MEU does it a little bit differently. You form in Okinawa, and then you decomposite before you fly back. So the only ones who will remain with us after we get back are engineers. So if there's any any from the engineer platoon that are listening right now, you should stay with us until we get back, and then as soon as we get back, we'll chop you back to 1st CEB. But it shouldn't have any impact on our timeline for post-deployment leave. That question probably comes from the return of the last battalion who came back was delayed significantly because of world events. That MEU had to stay on an alert status. We don't anticipate that will be the case with us. The 31st MEU does it a bit differently from the Westpac MEUs.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, and I believe this is coming from a Marine, I hope, is how do we get the Eagle cash card?
I'm glad you asked that because Sergeant Major just talked to me as Mark was speaking. Sometime in April, we're going to have a class from the IPAC about the procedures that we need to do to sign up for the Eagle Cash Card. And to Mark's point, only the Marines will get the Eagle Cash Card. The spouses don't have that. That's only for purchases on ship. And then we'll find out when we get that class from IPAC whether we're going to register for and receive those cards here in the United States or whether we're going to do that once we get to Okinawa prior to getting on a ship. But we will for sure get those cards before we go to Okinawa. Before we go on board the ships from Okinawa.
Okay. I have a question. I think I'm going to take a swing at this one. And the question is, how will we, spouses, get the addresses of our Marine, and how long will it be before we get that information? Also, is there any cutoff times for when we can send mail to them? The information on all the postal information, it'll be more of an outline than anything else, but I'll give you the formats, and we'll also come up with, from the postal officer, dates that reflect the mail periods, because our post office box that kind of generates all of our mail going to that direction will open up 10 days prior to to our advon actually showing up on island. After that, it'll be the entire battalion of those that deploy when they get ready to leave. So sending mail to their current address will get automatically forwarded for a time period. However, when they do leave CONUS, meaning the continental United States, then you need to start using their deployed address. And I will provide that format to you. One thing that you're going to have to get from your Marine or sailor, though, is their actual box number and the exact zip code, because they do everything now in our virtual world. They get a virtual mailbox in which their mail, then the idea is that their address will stay the same for the entire deployment, and that it's tagged with a location through the post office, so when they go to different regions, they go to different ships, that tag then follows, the mail follows them to that location by their sorting process. So that is in a nutshell, and basically more to follow on that. Okay, next question. Will the Marines that are leaving in April, I take that that's our advon, return early than the rest of the Marines that are leaving in May? And then when will they know the exact dates they are leaving rather than on a range of dates?
So that question likely comes from my wife, because I always go on the deployment advon and then come back on the main body. The answer is yes, there will be an advon when we come back. It'll be about 30 days prior to the flight window that the main body comes. So it'll likely be mid-October. And for the most part, Marines who go on the deployment advon should be coming back advon as well. But there are always circumstances, operational or personnel circumstances, that require modifications to that. So for the most part, if your Marine is going on the deployment advon, they will likely come back, but it is not a certainty.
Okay, the next question is, can you go more into depth about the Marines' restrictions and limitations for leave before the deployment?
That's an excellent question. We should have addressed that. So right now, like I said during the brief, the plan for our deployment is to deploy on time. That's what Higher Headquarters and Headquarters Marine Corps is telling us to do. So as briefed, we're planning to deploy the advon sometime between the 10th and the 20th of April, and the main body sometime between the 10th and the 20th of May. For each of those blocks, for all personnel leaving in April or personnel leaving in May, there's a predetermined leave block that's 2 weeks long. In the case of the Advanced Party Marines, that starts next week. Those leave blocks are still going. We're still going to have advon and main body leave blocks. The difference is, because of restrictions, that have been put in place by the Secretary of Defense, by the Department of Defense, on any travel, leave, official travel, anything other than deployments is on hold for 60 days until May 11th. So your Marines and sailors in 2-4 can go on leave on their leave block, but it has to be in the local area. And the local area, again, Sergeant Major, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's 200 miles. So if you're going on leave somewhere within a 200-mile radius of 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, your leave will be approved. If your leave request was for outside that area, that leave request is going to be denied, and then you can resubmit to take local leave during that period. Sir, did I get all that correct?
Okay, the next one, I've already answered this question, but I'm going to give Staff Sergeant K out of the S6 a kudos because he asked a good question about the postal, and I just wanted to make sure you knew that we acknowledged it already. So you're good to go there, Staff Sergeant. The next question, if I am due in early June and none of my family is able to fly here due to the coronavirus, is my husband eligible to be a late deployer? If not, will he be allowed to fly back and take his secondary caregiver leave after I give birth?
So this is a very specific and unique circumstance. So what I would advise is for that Marine, he needs to talk to his chain of command tomorrow and address the specific circumstance up through the company commander, and Lieutenant Colonel Byrne, I'm sure, would be more than happy to talk to that Marine about their specific circumstance. I'm not going to make any promises for company commanders or the battalion commander about who's going to deploy when for special circumstances like that. That is an answer that needs to be provided by a Marine's chain of command. So please bring that up through your chain of command tomorrow and make sure that it's addressed at the appropriate level.
Okay, so the next question, and you already answered, it was with the virus going on, are they still getting liberty until deployment? And the answer to that one is yes, but within the limitations that you previously described. New questions are popping in now. Is there a 2-4 spouse page? Can 111 spouses get access to it? Facebook, sorry, she wasn't specific, but the answer to that is yes. We've already talked this over with our spouses in our volunteer group, and any spouses that are going to be affiliated with the BLT are more than welcome to join not only our spouses Facebook page, but you also are invited to all of our events. Once we get things back online and can get things rolling again, you're going to be invited to all of our events. And you can also volunteer within our volunteer group that we have within the 2-4 inside the BLT that we're going to be establishing. So you're more than welcome to join us if you happen to be one of those super volunteers. Make sure that you register at the volunteer website so you can track your hours as well. Okay, the next question. Will Marines be able to send items like swords or knives purchased back to the United States?
I have no idea. But I imagine that the restrictions on mail going to Okinawa also apply to items coming from Okinawa. So I'll direct that question to our postal office. I hope you're watching, Adjutant, and have an answer ready for us tomorrow. We'll get that answer out to the company commanders.
Okay. Next question. Are current planned field ops still going on despite worries about COVID-19 and the suggestion that groups of 10 or more not be in such close proximity?
Yes, they are. So the guidance that we received from our higher headquarters from 1st Marine Division is that we still need to be ready to deploy, and we still need to continue the mission. And so there's some training that's been curtailed or canceled because of circumstances outside of our control. For example, if there were contractors or personnel that we were relying on that we no longer had the support of. But for the most part, the training that's been scheduled is still going as planned. Luckily for us, the time that this is occurring, the vast majority of our field training has been complete, and now we're transitioning to some of the administrative readiness for deployment. So there's not too much impact to us. even if field training restrictions were to go in place. But as of right now, field training continues, and like our medical officer spoke about earlier, just like in garrison, in our barracks, and in our command post, and the shops that the Marines work on around Camp Mateo, when Marines go to the field, their leadership are taking very specific precautions to make sure that we have enhanced hygiene. So increased access to stuff like hand sanitizer, running water so we can wash hands, and then dispersing in areas where we're bivouacking so Marines aren't right on top of each other. We're also putting some minor restrictions in place with regards to physical training to avoid physical touching as much as possible. But the short answer to the question is field training is continuing for the most part as scheduled.
The next one here, I'm just going to cover over a couple of items because it almost gives the appearance that this Marine hasn't been paying attention to the formations that I've attended, and I know that have been passed by the battalion commander, the sergeant major, and every company commander there on down. First off, he asked, is pay any different on the ships? And I can answer that, yes it is, due to the fact that you're no longer, your meal card still is in place, but now you're going to get what they call sea pay. And that's all conditional based upon a cumulative sea time, which I can tell you that the majority of this battalion won't receive anything more than $50 a month in their pay. Your meal card, no, you can't get BAS while you're on island. That's a given. Everybody is going to get subsisted at the chow hall. The only difference is on ship is that staff NCOs, meaning E7s and above, have to pay into the mess, which is a separate cost. So it may actually cost them more to subsist on the ships. And as far as if you're leaving the island, you've been watching this brief, you've got the lowdown from the OPSO, so this is something that, again, talk to your leadership on this and how it applies to you. Next question. Whoops, went all the way out, hold on. And they keep on racking up. I'm just wondering if we have pay question. What about COLA? No, there is no COLA. So COLA does not apply. That only applies if you happen to be permanent personnel assigned to the island on accompanied orders. Good evening. I don't know if this has been asked already, but when would ADVON be leaving? Yes, it has been covered, so we ask you to go back through this, and they will be leaving in mid-April as identified by the OPSO here. Dates not specified as of yet is still a window. Has the DOD restricted domestic travel for 2-4, and does this affect their pre-deployment leave? We've already covered that too as well.
Yes.
So again, go back through the video. You may have got in a little late, but we have covered that in detail here. So I'm trying to get through this so that we don't extend this any longer than what is needed. How will the coronavirus affect life on ship if they do deploy?
Okay, that is a good question, and I don't know if Doc, if you want to add anything when I'm done, feel free to come on up. But so I just want to reiterate, and some of you may have come on late, but Doc did speak earlier about coronavirus, and that in Okinawa, which is the island we're going to, which is I think about 1,000 miles away from mainland Japan, there's only 3 confirmed cases of coronavirus out of, 238 tests that have been done. So Okinawa itself is a very low risk area for coronavirus. Life aboard ship, assuming we follow the procedures that are put in place to make sure that we're protecting the Marines, shouldn't be any different, except that right now there is a restriction on if ships make a port call or do Marines and sailors do exercises in foreign countries that are considered high threat, there's a 14-day restriction of movement period when you're done with that. And likely for us in Okinawa, we'll also have to do that 14-day restriction of movement period when we get to Okinawa, and then we'll likely have to do it, depending on where the virus is by the time we're done with the amphibious portion of the deployment, we may have to do it again when we get back. We'll know more about that in October. Hopefully this virus isn't still around by then. But there shouldn't be any restrictions to life on ship itself. Doc, do you have anything to add? Okay.
Next question is, the tentative deployment window for leaving still remain the same for the main body? Short answer to that is yes. So we'll go on to the next one. Hi, does 111 still have a lead block that does not interfere with deployment departure date?
Okay, so I'm glad there's a lot of Marines and their families from 111 that have joined us. That's a good sign, and I'm glad you guys are part of the team. I would ask that you direct any questions, because 111 doesn't belong to 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines yet. I would ask that you direct any administrative questions about leave and training that you have left in Charlie Battery for the remaining time before we deploy to your battery leadership or battalion leadership, because we're not in a position to answer that as Charlie Battery doesn't officially belong to us yet.
Next question is, do you know anything about the post-deployment lead block? Is it possible it would be combined with the holiday lead block?
We don't have the answer to that question yet. You should be able to get information on that about halfway through our deployment. We'll start thinking about things like the exact date and location of the ball, what the Thanksgiving 96 is going to look like, and our post-deployment leave / holiday leave block. Some of it's going to depend on when exactly we come back. We don't know that yet, so we're not going to be able to give you an exact answer.
I'm going to field this one, sir. Question is, will there be a lead block while in Okinawa? Could spouses fly to Oki for said lead block? And the answer to that is, quick answer is no. Your Marines are deployed over there for such a short duration of time, and they are going to be fully engaged and employed during this time. And with the coronavirus 14-day limitations that we have maybe involved on both ends, it even cuts that window down even smaller. So there will be no leave authorized unless it's an emergency leave that's been approved by the battalion commander for Marines and sailors to return home. Question is, will Joker be going to the field next week?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know how that one got in there. So you should be asking your chain of command on that one there, Marine.
All right, Mark, let's do one more question, and then if there's additional questions that you have that were not addressed in this forum, your chain of command is always more than willing to field any specific questions you might have. All right, last question from Mark.
Oh, this one's a good one because they're going there. Can you go more into depth? Not this one. Are we allowed to get tattoos while in Okinawa?
That's a perfect segue for me to call the Battalion Sergeant Major onto the stage. Maybe he can address that question. But he was also going to impart some words of wisdom to the Bastard family. So he's going to come up and give his parting words before he turns it over to the CO. And perhaps, Sergeant Major, while you're answering that question, you can also address one of your favorite topics, tattoos.
I love tattoos. Thank you very much, sir. First, good evening, everybody. I would like to give a huge shout out to Pacific Coast Church and to the gentleman that's back there killing it, running back and forth with the cameras. He's been doing an excellent job, and everybody up there, thank you very much. To everybody that's at home watching us right now, thank you for coming on and asking all your questions. First, what I would like to say to everybody is rest assured that Lieutenant Colonel Byrne has prepared us, and everybody in this battalion and soon to be BLT is going to be ready to fight. So, you know, we're not worried about that. I think we've been doing a really good job at preparing ourselves, and he's leading us in the right direction. So all of us know what we need to do. There really is no surprises. I know this thing that's going on right now has thrown in a wrench in everybody's plan. I'm trying not to get the corona. I'm trying to stay away from the mic. But I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, just to give you a little bit of advice on what should you be doing, what should the Marines be doing, how do we prepare, are we going, are we not going, right? You already heard it today, we're going. Everybody's going, everybody's ready, families are ready to roll, so nothing's stopped unless we get otherwise word. But, you know, what are we gonna do while we're deployed and everybody's left back here? So I think I said it before in this venue last time, is the answer is easy. You know, just like we've been preparing when we go to the field, or we're at ITX, or we're doing our hikes, our spouses, our kids, mom, dads, everybody's back home taking care of business. So nothing's changed. The only thing that's happened is that we're not gonna be there in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right? It's gonna be a couple months. So we need to continue with that mentality about taking care of each other and building the network, you know, reaching out to somebody next door to you. And I know with this unfortunate event right now, everybody's like, well, how am I gonna get things? What if I get sick? You know, what am I gonna do? What if it's just me and my daughter or me and my son? I think the answer is right in front of you. You know, reach out to somebody that you know. Right now is a really good time for you to make new friends and figure out how are we gonna do this while our Marines and sailors are deployed. So, you know, no surprises there. You at home are prepared. More prepared than what you think right now. The other thing is we're gonna be in contact. So if you need something, we'll be able to talk to you from over there. And we have Mark back here, and we have Stusser and Armistead, which is our URC, that's gonna be our liaison with us. And we'll be able to make contact with them like within 24 hours, easy, because of the communication piece that we have with them. And if not, if it's delayed, as soon as we get it, we'll be able to answer it, especially if it's an emergency. So don't think that we're gonna leave and forget about you. And all that's taken care of. Now, about the Eagle Cash Card, I just got right now the date. So 15 days prior to us leaving, we'll be getting our Eagle Cash Card. For those that don't get it here, you'll still be able to get it in Okinawa if for some reason you weren't there to receive it. And the Eagle Cash Card is really good. I really recommend everybody to get it. I know my wife already told me, she's like, hey, I'm gonna put you on allowance because she already knows how I am. So I recommend you do the same thing. The way the Eagle Cash Card is just like a little deposit, right? You can have $100 going there every month, and that's all you can spend unless you choose to pull some more money from your account with your card. So it's a really good way to manage money and expectations of what you're gonna save before you come back. So if you're back here holding it down and you have your significant other deployed, you know, it'd be good to just tell them, hey, this is all you're getting and that's that. And if you need something, you're probably gonna need permission. Let me talk about the ball really quick. So as ordered, it's still going Vegas. So hopefully everybody's happy and, you know, excited. I am. Everybody in the battalion is, because we're having it over there. We haven't really picked a venue yet, okay? So we have a list of venues that we're gonna check out, see which one works for us. We heard all your concerns and, you know, any questions that you had about the ball itself. So we have addressed all those. I think we have a really good understanding of what you want, and we are making a promise to deliver something better. Not that the last one was bad, but we can always make something better. So, and it's in Vegas, so who doesn't like going over there? The other thing about deployment, really quick, retention. So I'm gonna put my plug in for retention right now, right? Because it is one of my jobs also to make sure that we maintain, keep, you know, the highly qualified Marines in the Marine Corps to keep fighting. So some of you and a lot of you have spouses that are EASing, that are part of the fiscal year 21 campaign. So that means that they are gonna re-enlist this exit the Marine Corps this coming up year. So while we are deployed, the FY21 campaign plan is gonna open for re-enlistment. That happens in July, and in June is when the message comes out. The reason I wanna talk about it right now is because a lot of times the message doesn't go to the spouse, it stays with the Marine. This is a joint decision that you have to make. So, you know, what's best for you and your family? What's best for your future? Right now, you know, things are looking a little hazy, so people are starting to question, do I get out or do I stay in? You know, I've told some Marines, we have a sure paycheck. That's one of the good things about being a Marine right now. You know, it comes at a cost, nothing's free. You know, we have to deploy, other people don't. But we're earning our pay every single day. So if you are in that category and you know that your husband is gonna re-enlist around that time, you should probably have a really good talk with them. You know, what does that look like? Is there a bonus? Can we choose where we wanna go next? You know, can we go to a special duty assignment? There are all kinds of options out there for re-enlistment, really good ones. This past year, I don't know if it's gonna be the same, but there was one that offered $75,000 for a specific program. Another one offered $42,500 just to stay in the operating forces, you know? So who couldn't benefit from that? So if the information didn't get out to you, now it's out to the masses. So ask your Marine, you know, when do you EAS? Because I heard that there might be some money on the other side and you like being a Marine, so why not stay, right? Everybody says you're good, you should do it. So I'll leave that plug there, you know, ask questions. to your Marine so they can bring them to their chain of command if they have any questions about their future and their career, and we'll do our best to help them make the right decision for them and the family. The last thing that I want to say to everybody is thank you for your support. Thank you for letting your Marine and sailor come to work every day. It really makes a huge difference when somebody comes to work and they want to come to work. You know, we have a really good battalion. I think we've done a really, really good job at, you know, fostering, taking care of one of each other. You know, so we always talk about that, taking care of each other, taking care of families. You know, the environment that's been set here by Lieutenant Colonel Byrne is magnificent. You know, all of us are allowed to make decisions. We're allowed to make paths for our careers. You know, a lot of Marines got to go to places they wanted to because of him. So I really, really appreciate what you've done to support them and tell them, like, hey, you know what, get to work, or wake up, or prepare your pack. So now what I need you to do, and this is everybody, moms, dads, husbands, wives, kids, dogs, if your dog talks to you, hey, it's time to pack up your stuff, let me help you. You know, because that's what I want to expect at my house, I know. So the support is super important, you know, to get that thing put together. Even just packing your pack when you're deploying. If you do it together, it means a lot. You know that when you left on a good note, and you know that when you're coming back to something so much better, you know, because as you're apart, I personally believe that you grow a lot closer. So I'll leave you with that. I'm going to pass it over to the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Byrne. Again, if there are more questions that come up or concerns, you know, feed them to your Marines and sailors and have them please pass them up their chain of command, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Hope everybody has a good evening.
All right, good evening, Bastard Nation. Thank you for dialing in, those of you that did it live, and then for anyone who is watching the tape of this later on. First, just to echo Sergeant Major's comments, thank you to the staff of Pacific Coast Church. They've bent over backwards to make this happen, and we really appreciate it. Here locally within California and then the Orange County area, there has been restrictions placed on how many people can congregate in one place at one time. So they're no longer holding services, but they still made sure that they were able to support this. So thank you very much for that. It's been touched on by each one of the speakers. Obviously, we're in an uncertain time with regard to the COVID-19 virus and all the uncertainty that's created. The first question that came up is some amplifying guidance came out in the past week was whether or not we're deploying. That question has been answered. We're operating off the guidance that we've received from higher headquarters, being 1st Marine Division, Headquarters Marine Corps, so we are planning that we'll deploy on time. Additionally, as everybody else across the country, there's new terminology that's associated with that. Through Mark, we're sharing that information with the families, whether it's restriction on movement, at-home monitoring, self-observation, isolation, quarantine, things of that nature. And then through the chain of command for the Marines and sailors is we're educating them with regard to what the terminology means as well. Steps we're taking to ensure that we are not putting anybody unnecessarily at risk or doing everything we can to minimize any risk that Marines and sailors are exposed to is we have tracking right now of anybody that is not currently at work, that they're in a leave status. And we've confirmed where they're currently located at, and we're confirming the date they may be on leave until next Tuesday, but they may actually be planning on returning to Camp Pendleton next Sunday. We're nailing down that information as well. And then if any symptoms, if they develop any symptoms or they travel through any high-risk areas, we're making sure that we're aware of that and proactively engaging with them to provide an assessment and take the appropriate action based on what the particular circumstances are. As well, for both the families and the Marines, that's the steady guidance on that is if you develop any symptoms, you don't immediately go to a medical facility, contact your chain of command, contact the medical support personnel. They will, over the telephone, remotely do an assessment and then provide guidance with regard to what action that Marine or sailor needs to take in order to receive the treatment necessary. And based on the outcome of that assessment, we'll determine what status they're in. And as was mentioned by Lieutenant Muller, we do have some Marines that are in a restriction of movement status based on individuals that they were exposed to, but we do not have anybody within a battalion right now that has been diagnosed with COVID-19. The other piece touched on by Major Nagel was the adjustments to the leave policy. So from Headquarters Marine Corps, only local leave is authorized. Within 1st Marine Division, 5th Marine Regiment, that is defined as 200 miles from the Camp Pendleton area. Colonel Weiler's guidance for 5th Marine Regiment, and that's our higher headquarters, and the guidance that I'm planning to adhere to as well, is I'm not going to put additional restrictions on any of the higher headquarters restrictions that are levied. So whatever they publish to us is what we will act upon. There was a question that came up to Mark after while Sergeant Major was speaking with regard to the upcoming leave blocks, whether it be the Advon leave block or the main body leave block. Understanding that Marines are restricted to the local area, that 200-mile radius that I spoke of, is it possible for family members to travel to the local area and spend time with the Marines? It is. Fact of the matter is, I don't have any authority over you, so you're free to do whatever you choose to do. However, for Marines, the 200-mile limit will remain in place. I would just ask for everyone, both for Marines and for their families, understand that everybody needs to have a little bit different mindset with regard to decisions they're making right now. It needs to be what is in the best interest of the larger population. So if you're coming from somewhere where there's increased risk of exposure to the coronavirus, then it may not actually be the best move to come here because we're potentially cross-contaminating from one area of the country to the other. So that's an individual decision for you to make. However, the answer to specific questions of whether or not you're able to travel to the area, as I said, I have no control over you. You're free to travel as you see fit. Okay, moving forward with regard to coronavirus, a couple things that we will continuously do is make sure that we're disseminating updated information. We're getting updates on a daily basis, and it's very similar to what you're seeing. It's Center for Disease Control centric with regard to where outbreaks or areas of concern have been identified within the country. And then we are, on the family side, we're disseminating that information via the Deployment Readiness Coordinator. And then on the Marine side and sailor side, we're distributing that information through the chain of command. I also understand there's rumors running rampant. I would tell you, go back to my previous comment, official information or any guidance that we have will come through the DRC network for families and through the chain of command for Marines. And if you don't hear it from one of those networks, then you should assume it's a rumor and don't take it as the truth. Moving forward for the Marines and sailors of the battalion. It was touched on in detail by Major Nagel, but we do have work we need to get done in order to prepare for deployment. And just so you understand what my priorities are between now and when we depart, first and foremost, it's going to be protecting the force, and that really ties into the COVID-19 concern. So I've already talked you through what procedures we're taking to ensure that nobody else is exposed to the virus, and we'll continue to do that up through when we deploy to ensure that we don't have anybody come back that is potentially a carrier and maybe asymptomatic and then subsequently contaminates other individuals within the battalion. So that's priority one, is protecting the force. Second priority is wrapping up the training that we have scheduled, and there's not a lot, but it is important, so we're going to continue to complete that training. And then shortly before we leave, we're going to turn over all the equipment that we've been entrusted to maintain and we've been using to support our training. And we have a responsibility as stewards of that equipment to make sure it's in good working order as we pass it off to the battalion that will receive it from us. So we're going to make sure that we're doing that right. And then the final priority is making sure that everybody's administratively prepared for deployment. For families, what I encourage you to do during the remaining time ties into that fourth priority. Make sure that you have done your preparation for deployment with your loved one. So that could be legal in terms of making sure that wills or power of attorneys as you require them are completed. Financially, that you've had the conversation with regard to if it is going to be a distribution of funds between the deployed member and the family, what is that going to look like? Because that can often be a source of stress if the Marine or sailor is overspending while deployed and creating financial hardship for the family. So rather than reactively address that, I highly encourage you to have that conversation ahead of time so that there is no confusion with regard to who's getting how much money. Also, for those with small children or regardless of what age your children are, I would highly encourage you to be talking about the deployment. There is numerous means by which you can stay in contact with the children while you're deployed. We talked about the electronic means via FaceTime, cell phone, phone calls, and then emails as well. There's also United Through Reading, which is a deployment-specific program that Mark has sent information out to the families. So if you need him to resend that information, please contact him directly, and you can do that. As well, support network. So there is a pretty robust family support network that's already in place, but it could always use some additional members. So there's a varying degree of experience with regard to deployments. There's the vast preponderance of families, this is going to be their first deployment, and then there's other families that have done 6 or 7 of those. And for the ones that have done a deployment before, they've got the experience that is beneficial to those who are going through it for the first time. So first and foremost, understand you're not doing it by yourself. The battalion is going to go out with about 1,000 Marines and sailors, many of them married and with small children. So your experience and the challenges that you're encountering are no different than others are. So I would encourage you to develop your network, both at the personal level as well as across the command, so that you have, if you encounter a problem, you've got resources that you can leverage through Mark or through some of the other wives and loved ones in the battalion. And then finally, I would encourage you to set some goals. Mark talked about on one of the slides that he covered earlier, but for both the Marine who's deployed as well as for the family that's back, set some goals that you want to accomplish during deployment, and you'll find that the time will actually go by a lot quicker. Final points, first and foremost, is be positive. I tell you, it's contagious. If you're a parent and you've got small children, and every day you wake up and you have a negative attitude, the children are going to feed off of that. So the most important thing you can have is a positive attitude. Fact of the matter is, this is a Marine family. This is inherent in what we do. The Marines are an expeditionary force, and we deploy all the time, so this is what normal looks like. If it's whether you plan on doing one enlistment or plan on staying in for a career, this is something that your children are going to have to get used to. And your mentality and how you approach your day-to-day time while your loved one is deployed is going to go a long way with regard to how your children, what their perception is of it. To echo something Sergeant Major said, we're ready to go. So told you we're deploying on time, and that's not a problem for us because we're ready to go. We've put a lot of time and effort into getting to this point. We've got, as I mentioned before, we got a little bit more training we're going to wrap up to ensure that regardless of what circumstances emerge and that we're required to respond to, we're fully prepared to do that, but we are absolutely ready to go. That doesn't happen by accident. It's a result of a lot of hard work by the Marines, but it's also a result of a lot of support provided by the family members, both those here locally as well as those back at the home of record, wherever that Marine or sailor came from. So thank you very much for your support. If the Marines didn't have that, they would not be able to come to work and focus on what we need them to focus on and ensure that they're ready to go. But that has been what's happened, and as I said, we're ready to go. So final piece I would tell you is keep the communications open. So you know what we know right now, and that was the whole purpose of this town hall. We're in a dynamic time, so I can't guarantee you things won't change. If things do change, then I talk to you about the means by which we'll communicate that to you. For the families, it'll be through the Deployment Readiness Coordinator, and for the Marines, it'll be through the chain of command. If you have questions or issues come up, please let us know, whether it be health-related, family-related, whatever the issue can be. My charge to the chain of command is we're responsible for assisting Marines in resolving their problems, but we can only resolve the problems that we're aware of. So please ensure that you keep the lines of communication open near term and then as well when we're deployed, so we can ensure that any issues that arise, we're able to address them and help the families be successful on this deployment. Thank you very much for everyone who dialed in, and thank you once again to Pacific Coast Church for facilitating this. Everybody have a good evening, and talk to you soon.